Good morning and welcome to another Christmas moment from Ascension Lutheran Church in Citrus Heights. I'm Pastor Scott and I'm coming to you on this New Year's Eve morning as we prepare to celebrate another time the ball drops in Times Square, another new year beginning and the old year ending. I'm reminded of the 8 years, or the 8 New Year's Eves that we celebrated in Connecticut. We lived about 90 miles from Times Square, and we would go into New York City fairly frequently. We'd go in when we had company visiting from out of town to show them around. We'd go in to enjoy the food and the theater. We spent a couple of Thanksgivings in New York and were able to see the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. We went in one Christmas Day in the afternoon and spent the night and enjoyed dinner at our favorite restaurant for Christmas dinner. But in all of those years that we were there and all the times we went into New York City, we never went in for New Year's Eve. Why? Because it didn't sound like any fun to me. You may not know that for New Year's Eve, people begin to gather and show up 8 to 10 hours before midnight. And they spend those 8 to 10 hours in Times Square in pens that have been created to help control the crowd so that you're in a smaller crowd within barricades so that you can't push in any one direction or another, that people can't get any sort of momentum that way. And once you enter into that pen, you can't leave. There's no in and out privileges. So 8 to 10 hours, trapped in a pen in Times Square on December 31st in New York City, where the temperature is dropping, where you don't have access to any restroom, for 8 to 10 hours, all to see the ball drop from where it is above Times Square and to maybe get on TV and scream and shout to maybe get those glasses that they hand out. Never sounded like fun to me. On this New Year's Eve day, we read from Matthew chapter 2, following where we read from yesterday, verses 3 through 6. When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to be the shepherd of my people Israel." We read this on New Year's Eve about how the arrival of the Christ child caused fear in Herod and in all of Jerusalem. And rightfully so. Even though Jesus was born in a lowly stable, a child to parents who had yet to consummate their marriage, in the most unlikely of circumstances, there was something about this child that created fear in the leaders and in the authorities. What created that fear? Well, it was the power within which that Jesus was born with. With all the authority of heaven, Jesus entered into human history, but in the most humble of ways. And Jesus came not to run for political office, not to overthrow governments, but to shake the foundations of power and the power structures that have been established in the world then and even now, by shaking their very foundations, by living out the gospel of love, loving his neighbor, giving of himself, and ultimately giving of his life for you and for me. That stoked fear in the hearts of those who counted on the system that has been created, that existed then, that continues to be created now, that people have used to benefit themselves, when Jesus established a system that's based on love and the loving of our neighbor and the mutual submission one to another. It doesn't support that kind of a structure, doesn't support the structures that we have built today. So it should create fear in the hearts of those who are using the system for their own gain. And it should be an encouragement to those who want to live out this gospel of love, selfless giving one to another, and establishing something new here on earth as we turn the calendar into a new calendar year. Thanks for spending part of this last day of 2022 with me. I look forward to seeing you next year for another Christmas moment.